Very cool. Well, okay, so what does it require mentally and physically to perform at that level? Because I think it's a combination of both.
Yes, I mean, but the thing is that Ellen Marrus is probably the poster woman for dedication. I mean, she went 18 months without having dessert. She didn't have Christmas dinner, you know. And we have a saying in sport: "What does third place taste like? Cake," right? So, so the thing is that she was very, very committed. But she, for example, learned Japanese so she could understand what the coach was telling her on the mat to her opponent, so she could figure out the next move.
Wow.
So, you know, Helen, of all the athletes I've coached in my life, is probably the most detail-orientated athlete that did every single thing. She watched YouTube videos of her fighting. She could understand her moves, you know. And now what we see is that now everybody's copying Ellen. So they're trying to see what she's going to do next. And we have a plan for Tokyo for that.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So for people that are here in the room, which are like a bunch of driven, successful entrepreneurs, male and female, I want to talk about some different advice and recommendations for people here to get in as optimal condition as they can on all levels, and things that, anything you want to talk about to improve not only their physical bodies, but their sleep or anything that you think is important. I first met, okay if I tell the story how we met? Yeah, so we both have a friend named Janet Atwood who actually invited both of us, unbeknownst to both of us. We had heard about each other because I had been Bill Phillips' marketing consultant since 1996. And Charles was writing for Muscle Media magazine. He's written for pretty much everyone. And basically, I'd heard of him, and he's, you know, had a big reputation in the world of fitness and bodybuilding and powerlifting and you name it. But I never met him in person. And so we go to Fairfield, Iowa, and we both go through meditation training for TM training. And that's how we met. And so we spent 4 days together and with like 5 other people who were all my friends going through meditation training. And it was kind of funny because we were in a hotel where there was like nothing to eat except a bunch of carbs, right? And you were like ready to kill somebody while going through meditation training.
Yes.
And we shot some funny ass videos in the grocery store and stuff. But so that's where me and Charles met. So you've explored a lot of different areas of the mind and the life. So what are some just fundamentals that people need to do in order to get in great shape?
One of the biggest myths is that it takes a lot of work to get a good physique. And I mean, Tim Ferriss wrote a book called The 4-Hour Body. Yeah, but I think that 4 hours a week is plenty. Even my top level athletes, as far as strength training is concerned, it's about 4 hours a week. But there's no messing around when I train, right? And I think what people should realize, the room is full of entrepreneurs, but the difference between you and an Olympic gold medalist is not that big because you're very driven. But the problem is that the way I explain to people is that you're like an oil lamp, and the flame is the yang energy. So the bigger you can burn the flame, it's great. So people, you know, spend a lot of their energy, but the problem is they don't take care of the oil. That's what we call the yin reserve. So executives should be really focused on building a highest possible yin reserve to be as yang as they want to be, because, you know, how many of you work 16-hour days? It's quite common, right? So, and then you cut back a lot of things. And I think that the modern trend is to say, you know, you have things like the one thing or Tim's philosophies, but you should try to shorten your workday and take care more of your yin reserve. And sleep is the limiting factor. 72.8% of Americans complain of sleep disorders.
Wow, 72%.
So okay, so where do we have most accidents in the US is when we put the clocks forward and we lose an hour of sleep. So they put more cops on the road because there's going to be more accidents. So just 1 hour of sleep makes a huge difference in accident statistics. So I think that we have to take care of our sleep patterns. And there's also, what I like to say to people is that the 2 biggest stressors are related to their mouth. In other words, it's the things we say, and it's what we put in our bodies. And the thing that happens is that you never had somebody say, oh man, I was so stressed last night, all I could eat was Brussels sprouts, right? So people will say, okay, I was so stressed last night, I went to 3 boxes of Pringles, you know, 2 kilos of chocolate chip cookies, blah, 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 blah. So we tend to self-medicate with carbohydrates. Why? Because we found out a long time ago that cortisol, which is a stress hormone, is lowered by insulin, right? But the problem with insulin, it's your friend sometimes, but for most of us, it's the enemy, because insulin is the hormone of aging. So the more insulin you make, the faster you age. And controlling the fat loss process is managing insulin. The more you can control your insulin, the better you will do.
Great. So when we were outside at lunch, I was doing a Facebook Live video, and I said, what's the best piece of health advice you could give to people that would be a total game changer? And you said if grains were eliminated from the planet, but the caveat being that half the world's population survives because of grains, and people, if there weren't grains, people would die. If you have the availability of food, like most people in this room, how would you eat?
Okay. What I've worked a lot with the hockey players, football players, and I got to make it very simple for them. So I say, ask them a question. I said, ask yourself, did the food you're going to put in your mouth was accessible to a caveman? And I run a test. So I go like steak. Oh yes, a caveman could have that. And then donuts. And they go, ooh. Is there a donut tree? No. Pop. Is there a river? Pop river? So if a caveman had access to the food, you can eat it. So that's a very simple rule to simplify our eating habits.
Did cavemen have, what about grains? They did have access to some grains?
Very little.
Yeah.
Grains are more linked. The grains started to get popularized in ancient Egypt. And then what we saw, though, if you look at skeletal remains, is that's when we start to have degenerative diseases. We used to be much taller, much more muscular when we were living more off a Paleolithic diet.
Yeah. So when you travel, as most people here, they travel a lot. How do you eat when you're on the road?
Well, the thing that you have to realize is that I actually do a lot of my teaching schedule based on the countries where I could find the proper food. That's why I don't go to England, right? It's like a third world country when you look at food. So,
and all those of you at England on Facebook Live, hi there, how you doing?
No, but in all seriousness, to be productive, you have to eat properly. But one of the things, for example, with jet lag, I just did a post today in some of my pages, is that the food you eat when you land in the country will make a big difference on how your brain's going to behave. So, for example, as they land, they say, "Oh, we're now going to prepare for landing." Well, you should drink about 1.5 liter of water. Why? Because if you ever notice, it's really hard to fall asleep if you got to pee, right? So, basically, when you drink a lot, you activate the kidney meridian, which is the energy meridian. So you drink a lot of water. Then this thing you should pull out of your briefcase or your purse is caviar. Caviar is probably one of the best brain-building foods, and you have to reset your neurotransmitters. And the yang neurotransmitters are dopamine and acetylcholine. So you could have caviar, or you could have, if you don't like fish, you could have roast beef. Okay? But it has to be a meat or a fish that contains a lot of tyrosine, because to make dopamine, you need tyrosine. So that would be a thing. And then the second thing I would eat is macadamia nuts, because macadamia nuts contain a lot of levels of choline, and choline will fire up your brain. And and also when you look at, when sometimes I teach, I land, let's say in Estonia, at 7 in the morning, and at 9 o'clock I'm teaching, and people go like, when did you get in last week? No. And they say, how come you could have so much energy teaching? Well, a lot of it with jet lag is actually your mindset. If you keep saying, oh, for me it's 3 in the morning in Boston. Hey, fuck, shut up. Like, you're in Estonia. You're in Estonia, live like an Estonian. Shut the fuck up. So, that's my philosophy.
That's it's beautiful. It's very, very sweet.
Yes.
What is your fitness routine? How do you exercise? How do you work out when you're at home and when you're on the road?
Basically, I wake up early. I do meditation first thing. Then I take my book and I write what I want to be most proud of before I go to bed. So that sets up my mind, and I write what I'm grateful for, but it's not repetitive. So you talked yesterday about lowering the bar, so sometimes I say, hey, it's a really great bed at this hotel or whatever. So I simplify it, and then I say, what am I going to do? Then write this down. This is the most important sentence of this interview. The first thing you put in your mouth in the morning provided it's food, okay? So the first thing you put in your mouth in the morning, provided it's food, will dictate the neurotransmitter cascade for the whole day. So that's why I'm a big advocate of the meats and nut breakfast, because it provides you with the raw material to make the proper neurotransmitters for the whole day. And there's lots of research, and from even the early 50s, on the content of your protein and the ratio between proteins and fats and the quality of the protein you ingest in the morning dictates the energy even in the later afternoon. So with children, what they found at Harvard is that if they eat, let's say, oatmeal, or even worse, microwavable oatmeal.
Yeah, or cereal or something.
Yeah, what they find is that when you give them lunch and they have to self-select the food they will eat, they make worse choices if they had a carb-only breakfast. Also, for example, if you give kids pancakes with that fake syrup, French Canadians would call that telephone pole syrup, because telephone poles don't have sap. So if you have, let's say, telephone pole syrup and then pancakes, kids score 20% less on IQ tests. Wow. Okay, because temporarily their brain's in a fog. Okay, so it's very important to set up your day with the right food. Then typically an hour after I've eaten breakfast, I train.
Okay.
Then shower up, take a post-workout shake, and go to work. Whether I'm at home or I'm on the road teaching, that routine doesn't change. And I think it's really important to have very steady habits in your life. And then this way you never have an excuse for missing out in the gym. You don't miss your dentist appointment, or you don't miss your appointment with your tax lawyer. Well, you shouldn't miss your appointments with your fitness, because you got to take care of your body.
So as you age, out of all the different things, say, because I do a lot of yoga, and I lift weights, which is why I'm bigger than you. Yeah. But basically, yeah. So,
yep.
So strength training, stretching, cardio, good, bad. How to go about doing it?
The problem with cardio is most people do long, slow distance, right? But if you look at research, the Olympic athletes who've done the most long, slow distance cardio have the most brain damage in later age. Okay,
really?
So a lot of cardiovascular training is actually brain damaging, and you could find it up in the research. So I prefer that people do interval type of training. But the most important thing is that you show up. Okay, so if your thing is yoga, or if it's Tai Chi, or if it's Taekwondo, or you want to play hockey 4 days a week, that's great, but you got to be active. You got to sweat, right? For busy executives, I've got certain types of workouts, which I call German body comp training, that people can do a lot of work. Basically, it's a fat loss through weight training. And strongman training is very good. CrossFit, if it's done in a proper box, is very good. Some people need external sources of motivation. They need to be in front of a group, and here's a very simple rule about exercise. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Okay? So if you don't enjoy it and you're just doing it because you need the discipline, that's bullshit. Okay? And I don't believe in discipline. That's a myth. I wrote an article, it's the most popular and most plagiarized article I've ever written. It's called The Myth of Discipline. And the basic message of this article is that you make the choice, and you've got to decide what you love more. Do you love your brain more than donuts? Then you'll exercise. Okay? Do you enjoy healthy joints more than croissant and Nutella, right? So I don't know anybody that's ever been mugged by a dozen donuts. It doesn't happen, okay? I mean, have you ever eaten anything by accident? No, it doesn't happen. So this is the type of conversation you need to have with yourself. And then when I tell people, just make a conscious choice. Is this the best thing for me now? But don't tell me you don't have discipline. What you're telling me is you love donuts more than having a great physique or a healthy physique, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there. So when people body fat and stuff, some of the things I've worked, because I've been through several of your workshops, like multi-day trainings and stuff, is people's ability to, because so many people, it's a vanity thing. They just want to lose weight. They want to look good, and it's almost like secondary or circulatory system, or how your heart's going to be, or how your brain's going to function. I mean, it's like we live in a culture that is so much about how they look. And what I've learned so much from you is hormone levels. And so that people can really have, you know, maybe good workout rituals and stuff, but their hormones are all jacked up. So what if people are really putting forth a lot of effort and they still feel lethargic, or they cannot lose weight, or they don't feel strong, or they're mentally foggy? What should they do to discover how to fix it, and what is causing that? I mean, other than obvious things like the environment. If you're working your ass off and you're giving your no time to rejuvenate, I think, you know, what you've talked about a lot is stress. Human stress can cause so much of. So what should someone do if they're either in a state of, like, I want to work out, this sounds good, I've always wanted to, but I can't stick with it, I can't stop carb cravings, I can't stop sugar, or I'm like tired, I have no motivation. I mean, just being in a place where they're stuck, how do you get unstuck?
Okay, the first thing is, I always tell people to do this. The best day to change a habit in North America is Saturday. Okay, so you don't have to rush to go to work, so you say, okay, I'm going to commit. But I think people overcommit. So I say, just go to the gym 10 minutes, okay? So it's better to undersell, right? And then after that, they could work it out. But the thing where people where they would have the most impact is actually sleep. Do you really need to send that extra email? Do you really need to watch the news? Do you really need to watch that TV show, okay? You could tape it. You could buy a Netflix subscription. There's a lot of research out of Germany that shows that the earlier you can go to bed, the better it's going to be for your hormones. So, and one of the problems we have with our lifestyle is actually lights, right? So the more we can offset lights, and there's a lot of technology out there for controlling the effect of light on your brain, but also gradually diminishing the amount of lighting in your house as you prepare to go to bed makes a huge difference. There's stuff you could put on your computer screen so that there's less stress on the brain and your eyes. So managing the electronics in your life will do a lot for your sleep. And simple things like don't watch CNN before you go to bed. I mean, if you've seen great news on CNN, it's usually 99% tragedy. So, and the thing that
TVs in bedrooms, I think, are incredibly unproductive sort of devices, especially for entrepreneurs. You know, if you have nothing going on in your life and TV is your biggest highlight, then maybe, but you know.
Yes, and then, you know, simple reading and book reading and journaling will do a lot for your sleep, because one of the things with sleep is that people can't shut off their brain. One of the most common disorders I see in executives is the inability to shut off the brain. So journaling is one of the best ways to get it out of your system, and I like people to journal before they go to bed. But having a grateful log, in my opinion, is probably the biggest step for sound sleep. And then, and you have to have what we call a sleep routine. So you have to have a countdown of what you're going to do and the activities you choose before going to bed. And if you go to my website, strengthsa.com, I've got lots of sleep strategies. But for example, there's a botanical called reishi mushroom. And one of the names in Chinese means the mushroom for the professor who lived too much inside his head. So reishi mushroom is actually an anxiety lower. It's an anti-anxiolytic. And then if you consume reishi mushroom extract before you go to bed, you actually have better sleep. There's a lot of different amino acids that can make a huge difference on the quality of your sleep, like theanine, okay? So that comes originally from green tea. How much magnesium you take before going to bed makes a difference. So a lot of people have inflammation because of stress. So for example, taking a probiotic with glutamine an hour before you go to bed lowers inflammation and you sleep better. I mean, the amount of sleep strategies that are possible for anybody are limitless. Right?
Okay.
I remember you, I'm trying to think who you actually were talking to about it. You said that you think one of the most crucial things of keeping your mind sharp was just having a lot of different interests in a lot of different areas.
I think that's true, because now I admire people who are single purpose. A brain surgeon who is really good and devotes all his attention to that, that's commendable. But that makes him more vulnerable. If you've got a lot of interest, and I've seen people in my business, television, who, when they were forcibly retired or elected to, they got bored and they didn't know what to do with themselves. I can't imagine being bored.
Oh, I can't.
If there was a 40-hour day, you know, and I had nothing else to do but sit and think or read. I can't imagine being bored. So it's important, I think, to keep active mentally, and the brain is like a muscle. That's a cliche observation, but if you don't use it, it's going to kind of atrophy.
Well, you've done a tremendous amount of work with just helping people, older people, however you define it, live better lives, understand their purpose. I mean, what would be some of your tips and recommendations as people get older to keep themselves totally mentally sharp? I mean, here you are, 87 years old. When I live here in Arizona, so when I went to pick you up today, you know, I was getting there a little early. I called, and your wife said, "Well, he'll be back here at 9:30." So you're right, doing something this morning. You have appointments this afternoon. I mean, you stay very active, and I mean, you're clearly a very sharp individual, and you're physically, you know, in fantastic shape. I mean, at least it appears that way to me. I mean, what are some tips and recommendations that you would have that would be significant life changes?
A realization that you can mitigate hazards. You can influence your longevity and your comfort and everything by habits that you clean up. When I was 25 years old, I thought it was the normal adult human condition to feel bad. I really did.
Really?
When I remembered when I was 15, I felt good all the time. If somebody had said when I was 25 and didn't feel good, when you're 45 and 65 and 75 and even 85, you will feel about like you did when you were 15. I would not have believed them. But I was too dumb to realize why I felt bad at 25. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I had a diet that would have not been good for a hog, really. And I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I drank too much. And I got that all cleaned up in short order, through the help of my wife. And with a decent regimen, I realized you can influence very heavily how your well-being is, how you feel, how long you're going to make it.
Right.
So I would advise that, let nobody adopt the idea that they're going to die young because an ancestor died young. That's not necessarily true.
Right.
You can do things to make things better, and if people realize that, they start doing them.
Well, you said a really important thing, which is you adopted a regimen that just turned it all around. I mean, what was the happiest time of your life or your career?
Oh, well, probably at points in 2020, because that was not just because it was the last, but it was because it was where I belonged, really. I once said to somebody, a newspaper interviewer said, I said, I've done everything there is to do in my end of my business, except play-by-play sports. And then I realized as soon as I said it, that wasn't true, because in 1939, I broadcast a boxing match on radio, blow by blow.
Wow.
Mercifully, no recording of that still exists, because it was pretty awful, I imagine. But I've done even play-by-play sports. So I imagine that being a generalist, I belonged on 2020, and I felt that was where I felt was most comfortable, because it was news, but it wasn't headline news in little snatches that you had to go on from one to another. You could get in depth in a thing and do a news feature, and I loved doing that. Well, some high points there.
I mean, all the time that you spent doing news reporting, do you think it's gotten better, worse, or is it just kind of the same?
Well, some of it's pretty good, but I think in some ways it has slipped because of the competition. As I mentioned, you know, the competition got a little fiercer than it ought to be, and then you ask yourself, how will we mitigate that? Do you want the government really running that?
Right.
No. Free enterprise is still the best way, but a proper regulation of free enterprise, and I would like to see the FCC a little less supinely weak than they've been on some points. But I think a proper supervision of what's going on, and then allow the free enterprise aspects to flourish, because that's what keeps capitalism alive.
For people in terms of keeping themselves fit, not just getting in shape, losing weight, but just as a lifestyle?
So the best tip I have is you got to discover what it is you like. Is it yoga? Is it lifting? Is it martial arts? Like, see what vibes with you, where you're like, oh, that was fun. Because again, if you haven't been doing something, it's hard sometimes to get that start.
Right.
So if you're doing something you love, then it's a lot easier to stay accountable, keep it in your routine. So activity, you just gotta move. People just need to move. Even if it's something as simple as going out for a walk, fresh air, put some good music on. People go to the gym, they may not work out hard, but they're moving and the mood changes. And then, you know, they go to the gym, oh, I don't have energy to do anything. They put a good playlist on, they get motivated by others around them, and then all of a sudden they're there for an hour working out.
Yeah.
So work on your environment, do something that you love where it excites you, it's something you look forward to. Grab friends so that, again, makes it more fun. Those are simple things that I would say that you need to do, but you gotta be moving at least 5 times a week. 15 minutes, even if it's minimum. We were talking at the genocide, so Scott, and just had a brand new baby, and he's like, I'm getting no sleep, and my business just went public. Like, he's got all these things. I'm like, just do 15 minutes. You know you've got 15 minutes, even if it's at your house doing burpees, whatever. And he's like, you're right. I can't make excuses. So make sure you're just moving. 15 minutes is better than nothing.
Right.
And get those endorphins flowing. That's gonna help you be more creative, gonna help you be happier. It helps stress relief. So whatever it is, even if it's short term, there's always some way to get active anytime you want.
In terms of like people that have no energy, mentally, physically. I know because we're in the middle of a pandemic. You've had COVID twice. I imagine that had to wipe you out for a period of time. What did you learn from it, and how do you regroup yourself when you're literally depleted?
Well, so again, it kind of goes back to the same philosophy I have when I have injuries. Everything's temporary, right?
Yep.
You do have to take the time to heal. So when I had COVID, it was important that I rested, tried to knock it out and not push it, and not try to go on runs or get exercise in. It's like, let your body chill. But then you need to be able to flip the mindset to go, okay, I've had my time, and now I need to be grateful that I am feeling better and utilize that. Again, making sure that we are not wasting days, not wasting time, not wasting what we are lucky enough and fortunate enough to have. So I remember the first time I got COVID, it was great weather outside, and I was just down for about 6 days, hard, like out on the couch. But then I wanted to get out and go. So I'm like, I'm gonna get on my bike and go. And got about 2 miles in, and I'm like, wow, I am exhausted. And normally I can just go for a while. But it was like, okay, well, I did it. Now I'll pull back so I don't have some setback and have it like last 10, 12 days longer than it should. But I was still able to do something. Why? Because I was now able to get off the couch.
Right.
So you've got to be able, it's self-motivation. People look for motivation elsewhere all the time, and that is okay. But you can't always be looking for others for motivation. You've got to figure out what it is that makes you tick.
Yeah.
So whether it's maybe a challenge. There was one point in my life someone said, oh, you will never do well in this sport. And I was like, oh yeah? Watch me. You know, and that drove me for a while. So what is it? You know, maybe it's that you have a vacation coming up and you want to get in shape. Well, that's not going to happen if you don't actually work towards getting in shape.
Right.
So if you set a goal, again, maybe it's a little competition you have with a friend so that you guys can hold each other accountable. Tap into the resources that you have to help you. If you're struggling with that, talk to people. Ask, you know, even Google, how do you get motivated to work out? Right. There's information out there, and it just takes one bit of information that actually impacts you where you're like, oh, okay, I can do that. Remember what the 12 said, you said take what works for you, you know? It's the same philosophy, it's different for everybody. But you've got to take the time to actually truly think about it. And people just want the answer.
Right.
The answer is different for me, for you, for everyone that's in this gym. Yeah. But you have to figure it out for yourself, and you've got to take the time to think about it. Jot it down. Again, what is it that makes you happy? Memes make me happy. Okay, well, if I'm find some exercise memes, whatever it is, if that's gonna get me off the couch and outside, great. But there's something that helps us tick. Yeah, everyone has it. You got to tap into that. And then work with people who can help you utilize what it is that's within you to achieve those goals.
Okay, so all this crazy shit about like hacking and different things from infrared saunas to cold plunges to, you know, I mean, do you do any of that stuff?
Yes, I do. So we actually, I haven't shown you, we have an ice bath back here. And as much as I hate it, because I hate being cold, Arizona winters kill me. So I'm not strong by any means. I'm a wuss, let's be honest. We call it what it is.
I was going to say that, but I was like, how do I say this to you?
It's
right?
the truth.
Yeah.
But, people talk about cryo and ice baths. Again, what works for me? I've done cryo. I had a company say, we just want to sponsor you and free cryo. I tried it 3 times. I've tried it different facilities. Does nothing for me. That's me. I have clients swear by it. Ice bath works for me. So I think, again, it goes back to
what does it do? What's the ice bath do for you? When
so
you
like after I do routine practice, I may be in there doing skills and routine for 4 hours. My body is beat, and it feels like I got hit by a truck and run over. But I get in the ice bath, 6-7 minutes, and I get out and I'm like, wow, all right, I can do this again.
Wow.
It refreshes me like no other. It takes inflammation down. With all the different injuries, it's so important for me to have that rehab. So that works. I do tons of body work. I have mobilities training that I do before I ever work out, before I do my routine practice, lift. So I have a whole regimen that I have to do to make sure I can stay healthy, body feels good. The biohacking stuff, that's still fairly new, totally intriguing. I'm in the mindset of try it.
Yep.
And if it works, or again, some of it could be placebo. But if it forces you to have an action that's more positive, who cares?
Yeah.
There's fads out there all the time.
There's a ton of shit that is placebo that works, and if it
works, it works.
Yeah.
And clients will say, I tried this. If it worked for them, I am never going to tell them no.
Right.
If it held them accountable to their goals, to their program, if it makes them happy, game on.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. But yeah, it's try these things. Why not? You're never going to know if you don't try. I tried cryo. It was a huge thing. Everyone was talking about it. Yeah, I do ice baths, and to me, that helps me. So great. I'm sticking with that.
Right. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey there, this is Joe Polish, the tall one in this video, and I've got the very awesome Dr. Mark Hyman and JJ Virgin, and we're working out here together.
And Mark feels great.
Yes, he does.
Look at that. Let's go. Let's do it. Of course,
So-
he probably won't be able to lift his arms up later.
Well, here's the thing. Both of you are like sugar experts. So which one of you smarter?
I love sugar.
You do love sugar?
I love sugar.
All right, but you both have written books about why sugar is toxic and poisonous. Now, I guess we're
This is all about blood sugar balance.
right. And what's
Which is
your
critical,
sugar
which is
solid.
everything.
I'm just
Right.
fed up. I'm fed up.
yes,
I'm just fed up with sugar, fed up with the food industry, fed up with all the bullshit we're eating, all the
that
crap
is
we're
true.
eating,
It is, and so is
all
JJ.
the lies the government's
Yes.
telling us, all the stuff that's food. I mean, I actually met with a woman who's head of the ADA, American Diabetic Association, this week, who has diabetes, who was following their freaking guidelines, was on 4 medications, shots, and all kinds of crap, and wasn't getting better.
she's
She went on
probably
my
getting worse,
program,
right?
and boom, off the medications, diabetes better. And she was like, wait a minute, the ADA is wrong.
If you follow that diet, you will become diabetic.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so when you say programs, so you both have programs, what do people do? People watching this, what do they do to get in optimal physical shape, get diseases?
They buy her book, they buy my book,
Yeah.
they do them both, and
We
they get a
are
double
very
whammy.
simpatico. Everybody that
How do
has to
people
do
get
our
both of you in their house? Like to just have a sleepover? If they wanted a sleepover,
You
how
want
would
to eat it, you don't want to eat over, not a sleepover.
Well, that too.
And
I
a
mean,
workout.
that would be actually kind of cool. What if there was a prize where you could hang out with Mark and JJ, get back massages, the whole works?
You know, I'm good
Who's doing
actually.
the back massage?
Me, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's how I got into medicine. It's just massaging people, and they're like, oh, it feels good. I'm like, oh, I like it.
Yeah, let's maybe do some medicine here.
Well, he's been going into houses and cooking.
That's true.
I
Well,
do.
okay, so I'm gonna plug some stuff here because I have done amazing interviews with both of them, which you can find at geniusnetwork.com. I love marketing.com. We've put them all kinds of.
And I
different
love
places.
Joe.com.
And yeah, and I love Joe, and that's really because this video I really wanted to lead back to me. 'Cause this was-
Always.
No.
Always.
But okay, so out of all of the things that you guys have learned, what would you consider are the essential elements in taking people that are at a stuck point? They're not exercising, they're not eating right, they feel hopeless, they have bought so many books, and they feel lost. What do
I
they
think
do?
my view, and I think JJ is probably similar, is people need to do a reset, like a reboot. When your computer's on the fritz and it's going round and round and it doesn't work, you've got to do a reset. So that's why I wrote the 10-day detox. So people can do anything for 10 days, and in 10 days, if you change your food and do a few simple lifestyle practices, you literally can change your physiology, retake your brain chemistry back, retake your hormones, retake your taste buds, And in 10 days, you can go from feeling like crap to feeling great. And the weight loss is just a side effect.
Yes,
And
it's
powerful.
automatic, like
It's
you
automatic,
said. And
right.
here's the coolest part about that, because people talk about losing weight and they're white knuckling and struggling.
Oh, forget it.
But when you reset your taste buds and you get rid of your sweet tooth, which you can do in 7 to 14 days, we've seen it.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, you've got the control back over sugar. And even though, like Mark says, I love sugar, it's like it's not an issue because you don't crave it anymore.
Right.
And then everything changes.
It's really true. And I think most people don't get that it's not their fault. Like people, I think they blame themselves.
Well, they're being duped
I
by
met a woman.
misinformation.
Right. I
It's
met a woman the
crazy.
other day who was told by a food expert, a nutritionist, that there was no such thing as food addiction. That it was her fault. That she didn't have willpower. And that she
Oh,
couldn't control
God.
herself. So
There is
she
no such thing as
so she
willpower.
read my book, which talks about the power of these foods like sugar to hijack your brain, literally to be biologically addictive. She says, I'm going to try it. And she literally got her body back, lost 30 pounds, and was able to reset her brain and realize that it wasn't her fault that she was fat. It wasn't her fault she was craving. It wasn't that she didn't have willpower. And our whole government policy and the food industry is all about blaming the fat person. Eat less, exercise more, moderation, all things. There's no moderation in bad stuff. Like if you actually are eating trans fats and high fructose corn syrup, you can't moderate that. You've just got to cut it out. And if you do that, you'll reset, and then you can enjoy all sorts of foods, but you're not going to become a victim of your brain chemistry that's been hijacked by the food industry.
Yeah, and if you assume that these are all drugs, which they are, and sugar is the #1 drug of choice, it's taking down everyone everywhere. Kids are not smoking and drinking at age 5, they're having juice and cookies. If you knew that, you wouldn't have a little bit.
No, that's
that
right.
would be ridiculous.
But I do
Moderation
eat
is
sugar. I do eat
crazy.
sugar, but like
It's not
it's a
what you
recreational
choose.
drug. Like I like
What you
tequila,
choose,
but I
that's
don't
what
like
you lose.
drink it all day long. But people have sugar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Well, they start with cereal and milk
That's
and
right.
juice and a banana or a muffin and
Right,
a
I mean,
latte.
that's right. And people don't realize that breakfast cereal is 75% sugar. It shouldn't be called breakfast. It
Should be
should be called dessert, right? It's like, so we need to just reset and understand how to
And
how that
find
works
where
in our
everything
body.
is sneaking in so that we don't turn our salad into a sundae and our
I love that. Salad into a sundae, right?
All right, so JJ, exercise, how frequently must you do it? Kind of, sort of. What are your thoughts on this?
you must do
She told me
it.
15 minutes twice a week. I'm good with that.
So, yeah, for weight
Look at
training,
it.
resistance. Look at this. Look at this specimen.
This
here.
is like 15 minutes once a year. Look at this.
Well, this was the start today of a whole new Mark, right?
Yes.
Right?
Today is the
Submit it
last
on
day of
camera.
the way Mark used to be.
I know.
All right.
You got to move more. Everyone should be moving at least 60 minutes a day. But if you're not getting hot, sweaty, and it hurts a bit, it doesn't count as exercise. But we are supposed to move.
That's why you were hurting me this morning.
That's why, because I wanted it to count as
Oh my
exercise.
God.
And I liked
I
it.
was hurting,
I
trust
liked
me.
it a little bit.
JJ
And
hurt me.
then high intensity interval training or cardio burst training 3 times a week to accumulate 4 total minutes of all out bursting. So if you're on the bike,
What's bursting? Where you go as fast
you
as you
go as
can?
hard as you can for 30 to 60 seconds, and you don't want to pace yourself, you want to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
It'll be the longest 30 to 60 seconds of your life. And then you recover and you do it again. 4 to 8 total minutes, 3 days a week. And then resistance training, hitting, pushing, pulling.
Pulling. Nobody told me about pulling. I was
No,
always
you missed
pushing.
that one. Hips and thighs and core, you do that at least twice a week. So for you, we'll start there, baby steps.
I'm good.
And that's the big thing is how do you fit fitness in? And then
Who you
you do
calling a baby?
You've been whining. You've been whining here all day. And then flexibility
I
work,
was.
but really like yoga flexibility work because you want to lower your stress hormones. And so that's that. Because that is huge. And that's why I don't like endurance training.
That's true.
So
That's true.
there you go. I mean, that's a simple core 4 formula that I think we agree on, and we're missing a little piece,
I know.
but we're fixing that. And that helps you with your sugar cravings.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It helps. It just helps you with your life. And so, if you do not take time out for this now, you will take time out for it later with very poor health and disease and probably misery and suffering. And so, if you're a parent, this is also something that children will watch how you live. They will watch you become a model. And so, you want to be a model not only for yourself but for everyone around you. And that's how everyone around you gets better. And there are a lot of forces that are literally always directing you in wrong. See, because I've always loved the line that the most expensive information in the world is bad information. And there's a tremendous amount of bad information that can kill you. So both of these individuals have written amazing books that have led literally, collectively, millions of people to better health. So what is the best book for people to start with you and then with you?
I think it's a 10-day detox diet. 10 days, people can do anything, reset, and then they own their body. And then they realize how close they are to health and happiness. And it's just a few days, and if it doesn't work for you, great. But if it does, you literally get your life back.
It will work if they work it.
It's
will
true.
work if you
It's
work
true.
it.
You don't have to believe me. You just have to do it.
Yes, and the sugar impact diet, and what the sugar impact diet helps you do is identify where all the sugars are sneaking into your diet, and to understand that it's not about no sugar, but that all sugar is not created equal, and you need to know which to choose and which to lose, which I've made simple to do.
There you go. And if you watch this on YouTube or wherever else, I'm going to put the links of their interviews and stuff related to both of them in the little area. So just do it, and it's fun hanging out.
You could pay like $5,000 to come see us, or you could buy the book for $10 on Amazon and like change your life.
That's true. That's it.
And they make good presents.
Famous last words from you.
I think the most significant thing you can do to change your health, to change the health of your kids, your grandkids, to change the economy is to lower your sugar impact.
Absolutely. I would say remember that sugar is a recreational drug and use it like that. Don't think of it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's a drug. And enjoy it, but not in a way that you would enjoy like tequila all day long.
And, you know, the body one, and I know there's so many different systems of the body, but you mentioned neurotransmitter chemicals. Mm-hmm. There's a great book, The Diet Cure and the Mood Cure by Julia Ross. Have you ever read them?
Not only have I read them, but I actually met Julia Ross over a decade ago, and she actually took me through a supplement regimen specifically for addiction, because she's one of the top neuronutrient therapists in the world.
This guy is a connector. He knows everybody, but so that's not very surprising. Yeah. But her work is so powerful, and a few lessons I pulled away from it is, I mean, that's where I learned of neurotransmitters. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some of the things, I guess, to set the stage, our neurotransmitter chemicals in our brain are what make us feel comfortable inside of us. They're literally mood-shaping chemicals inside of us. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, gamma-aminobutyric acid. Probably didn't pronounce that right, and I probably don't even care. So when we're eating sugar, alcohol, processed foods, flours, those actually displace our neurotransmitter chemicals, and those food substances can sit in the parts of the brain that should house the neurotransmitter chemicals. And because there's crappy things in there, it tells the brain, stop making neurotransmitters, because our neurotransmitter receptor sites are full. Mm-hmm. But they're not full of neurotransmitters, they're full of crap. So we can get into this place where being inside of ourself feels like we're laying on a bed of broken glass. So now we start perpetuating potentially addictive patterns because we're trying to get away from ourself. So we might self-medicate with more sugar because we feel like crap because we're eating sugar.
Right.
Because I just want to escape this sensation right now of feeling like I'm laying on a bed of broken glass. But then when you cut out a lot of the crap and start eating real food, like all of our neurotransmitter chemicals are made from proteins. We need like real food, not the crappy food, to help balance that out so we can have the biochemical potential to feel good inside of us, which we don't necessarily get, you know, if someone's going to a 12-step meeting, great, giving you community, but the donuts you're eating, the coffee you're drinking too much of, that can actually be making the body component worse while you're making the community component better.
Exactly, and sugar is really the gateway drug. Sugar is the biggest culprit to the stepping stone for addictive behavior, and we are feeding so much shit to ourselves and to people and to children, and they're setting the stage for these, you know, individuals to really be more susceptible to becoming addicts. Like, for instance, earlier I was saying there's a doctor, David Arneson, I never say his name right, the riversource.org, I believe is his website in Phoenix, and I went and met with him with my friend Paul Mittman, who is the president of the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and then Tom Faris, who is the Arizona Corporation Commissioner, because we're working on doing some stuff in Arizona to find a treatment system that we can have people, instead of them going to jail or prison, we can have them go through this and prove that it has efficacy to try to help people that have not committed a violent crime, first offense, that instead of throwing them in jail or prison, we get them treatment. And so one of the things we're working on is finding the best way that we can actually do this, and then see if we can, I'm working with politicians, although my world is not that. I want to just be the catalyst and let the people that know how to make these things happen with laws
take it from there, hand over the baton. But I want to see if we can get something tested here in Arizona, and then if it works, see if we can take it from state to state to state. And so when we met with him, he said he's been treating people for 16 years with IV treatments. He's very familiar with Julia Ross's work. He's an expert in neuronutrients and using amino acid therapies and IVs to treat addicts. And he said to me, and I'm not going to say it exactly because he's really brilliant at the way he explained it. He said that when you see like an addict on the street that's homeless or missing teeth, he said in a lot of cases what you're seeing is modern day scurvy. Okay. And they're just not even getting good vitamin C. Yeah. And a lot of these addicts are eating donuts, they're drinking sodas, they're eating candy bars, they're eating fast food, they're getting very terrible nutrition, and they have a ton of gut problems. Yeah. And he said, talked about, serotonin's produced in the gut, dopamine's produced in the brain. And if you basically do not fix the gut, then they're always going to be in a craving state. And he said something that was fascinating to me. He said, if you do not repair the gut and get them producing happy chemicals, what happens is if you send them to jail or prison, or you send them to rehab and they can sit down with the best talk therapists, the cravings are still going to be there and they're still going to be an addict. Mm-hmm. And I said, if that's actually true, millions of people are being thrown in jail and going into treatment without having their body producing it, and they can be sitting down with even smart people that are trying to guide and direct them, but the cravings never go away. Sure. And what happens, these people then have to get drugs in prison. So we have just as bad of a drug problem and drug addiction happening in people doing drugs in prison, and we're trying to lock these people up and keep them away from it. I mean, if you can get drugs in prison, drugs are everywhere. And see, here's the challenge. The challenge aren't even the drugs. The drugs are just a symptom of a far deeper problem. The addiction is a symptom of a deeper problem, which is disconnection, which is biochemical, which is all of these things. Because if you have biochemistry, the body isn't connected. So I don't say connection just in terms of community connection. I mean, you got to make shit work, wiring in your body. And so what he does is he has a lot of success with IV treatments. And I said, well, can you treat these addicts orally? He goes, well, if their gut is so damaged, no, you actually have to bypass it. But with IVs, and we're talking a few $100s of doing IV treatments where over a period of a few weeks, and he can really fix a lot of the gut issues with people, and then getting them eating foods that are not damaging to them. And I said, if this is actually true, this would literally save millions of lives if we could figure out how to do that and then make it available. So one of the many things we're working on is trying to bring these brilliant people and seeing how do we scale that. And so what I'm trying to do is just be the curator and share this information with people. And I'm going to interview these people, we're going to videotape them, we're going to put documentaries out, and we're going to really find, does this really work with numerous people. So one of the things that we're working on is seeing how do we set it up and take literally the worst addicts, street addicts, people that are homeless, and see if we can actually help them get out of that craving state. But that's just one of many things. But it's fascinating because if you look at what they feed prisoners, if you look at what most addicts eat, I mean, their diets are so unhealthy. For sure. And so therefore, their body is not creating the things it needs to cope.
Yeah, I would dare say the foods a lot of them are eating, a lot of the average non-addicts are eating as well, are foods that might make the belly full, but they're foods that actually take more nutrition from the body than what the foods deliver. Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely a recipe for, it's literal self-destruction.
Why? So, like what Stephen's work here is focused on is flow and basically high performance aging, right? So, what does that even mean?
So, talk about peak performance aging. The first thing you have to know is the old story of aging, which most of you have definitely heard and probably actually still believe parts of. It's what I like to call the long, slow rot theory. This is the idea that all of our mental skills and all of our physical skills decline over time, and there's nothing we can do to stop the slide. And this, actually, it dates back to Freud. It was something Freud said in 1907. He was scared of turning 50, and so he said, most people, once they turn 50, they are too fixed in their ways, I'm paraphrasing, don't even try psychotherapy with them. They're no longer educable. So the idea of an old dog can't learn new tricks, thank Freud. All that happened over the 20th century is we proved Freud right. By the 1990s, we had just figured out the biology of decline. And then a couple cracks started showing up in that thinking. And over the past 30 years, what we've learned is that all the skills we used to think decline over time, we now know they're use it or lose it skills. And if you never stop training them, you can hang on to them and even advance them far, far later in life than anybody thought possible.
Yeah. So, okay, so what are 2 or 3 of the most important discoveries that you've learned about your own body and your ability to perform with doing this? Because you do some crazy shit in our country.
I have to tell them what I did in our country for you. Okay, so.
And then we can show the video later.
Okay,
if you, yeah.
okay. So it's actually a Chick Set Me High story. So I'll tell it. It was the last phone call I had with Me High, Chick Set Me High. I passed away during COVID, and we talked probably 6 months before he died.
How old was he when he passed away?
I want to say he was 82, 83, somewhere in his mid 80s. He had it, and when I'd heard he had a stroke, so I really just called to sort of check in on him, see how he was doing. Little known fact about flow and Chick Set Me High is everybody talks about flow and performance. Chick Set Me High spent most of his life working on flow and adult development. Turns out, for reasons that we can talk about later, he argued that flow, on the other side of a flow state, learning increases, our skills increase, we're more adaptive, more complex, wisdom and empathy also get increase in flow. He argued that this is the engine of adult development, that it was through flow states that we actually mature as adults. Now, he argued it was the primary driver of adult development. I think that was overstating the case a little bit, but he spent most of his career working on adult development and flow. So I was talking to him, and I'm a lifelong skier, and my plan for my later years was to ski as much as possible. And I'm a big mountain skier, which means I like to take big risks, and I like, really gnarly, really scary, hard lines. And I was talking to Mike, and a bunch of his early essays had been translated out of Italian, and I'd read them. And he was always an outdoorsman. He was a rock climber and lived in Montana, hiked a lot, bless you. But I started to realize that this guy was a much more serious mountaineer and rock climber than he ever told anybody. Like, he was in these articles that got translated out of Italian, he was like talking about early 60s Yosemite Valley rock climbers by name. And I was like, there's no way you would know those names if you weren't in that community. And so I called him up to talk to him about this, and I was like, we were talking about it, and he just, out of nowhere, he's like, Stephen, you got to be careful. And I was like, what do you mean? Have you lost the plot? What the fuck are you talking about, Mike? And he's like, you do something, climbing mountains, rock climbing, your whole life for flow, and then you get to be my age, and some days you can't even get out of bed. Forget about climbing mountains. You need a backup plan. You got to be careful. And he was just telling me one flow junkie to another, have a backup plan for how you get into flow as you age. Otherwise, you could find yourself locked out of this state, and that's a real issue. And it really landed with me. And so, other side of the story is I'd been continuing to study peak performance aging, and there's a whole bunch of new theories that said, that I basically looked at in flow science and in body cognition and network neuroscience, a couple other places that said, not only can you teach an old dog new tricks, old dogs should be better than younger dogs at learning certain new tricks. And if this stuff that was worked in the lab theoretically was accurate, anybody over 40, over 50, over 60, over 70 should be able to onboard really difficult, challenging physical skills, supposedly impossible skills. So I decided at 53, I was going to teach myself how to park ski. Park skiing is the discipline in skiing that involves doing tricks off jumps and on rails and boxes and wall rides. It's incredibly acrobatic. It's very dangerous. And for about 11 different biological reasons, it's considered almost just really hard to learn if you're over 30, 35. And by the time you get to 40, 50, it's downright impossible. It's crazy. Most people, I have nothing funny to say.
No, someone just spilled.
I got the flow.
Yeah.
By the way, every time I hear somebody talk about it, I think I'm at a plumbing convention.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. See, that's group flow right there. Just tackling
flow. Well done. Problem solved. What the hell was I saying?
Park skiing.
We to test it. I made a list of 20 tricks that would cover 0 to intermediate. And once you get to intermediate in any sport, you can sort of take the random falls out of the equation, and you can be a little more intentional, it's a little safer. There were a bunch of reasons why I wanted to do this, but I had 0 experience. I could ski big mountains, but that's like the difference between, you know, speed skating, where you're in contact with the surface of the earth and moving in a single direction, and figure skating, where it's above the surface of the earth and you're twirling and flipping and all that stuff. It's a radically different sport. And I figured if it took me 5 years, cool, it took me 5 years. I accomplished all 20 tricks on that trick list in under a season, which was wild. Ryan Wicks, my ski partner, Wave, who works with me, the Flow Research Collective, Ryan was a former sponsored athlete, a park skier who had gotten injured, had a family, walked away, came back when I came back, and he made more progress in a single season than he's ever seen. And at that point we were like, okay, this is cool and it's working, but we've got like the sexiest pilot study in the history of pilot studies, but that's all we've done. So the following year we came back, and this is the video Joe was going to talk about, and we took 17 older adults ages 29 to 68, used the exact same protocol we were using, and in 4 days on the mountain taught them how to park ski or how to park snowboard. We then stripped out the action sports because maybe not for everyone. I don't understand that, but apparently not for everyone. And we turned it into a training called Enter the NAR that the whole goal of we'll talk about this in a little bit, but mindset is crucial for peak performance aging. Having a positive mindset towards aging, meaning I think the second half of my life is filled with like thrilling possibilities. I'm sure my best years are ahead of me. For a lot of neuroimmunological reasons, translates to an additional 7.5 years of health and longevity. So where to start with peak performance aging? You start with mindset. You start by working on your mindset. And when we stripped out the action sports, we just wanted to see if we could explode people's mindsets towards aging, and maybe give them it worked beautifully in I think it was 340 people. 500 is exaggeration. I think that 340 was the number. Worked really, really beautifully there. So now we're kind of confident that it works and onto something. But that's the story of those experiments are what at the heart of NAR country. And you asked what I did.
Yeah. What did you learn about your body, your ability to perform? Like what,
So for any of the things to make sense, I have to tell you one thing about flow. Flow states have triggers. You want more flow in your life, there are preconditions that lead to more flow. First thing to know, flow follows focus. It only shows up when all our attention is in the here and now. That's what all the triggers do. They drive our attention into the present moment. The most famous of these triggers, which I think somebody mentioned yesterday, is the challenge skills balance. We pay the most attention to the task at hand when the challenge of the task slightly exceeds our skill set. So you want to stretch but not snap. Put it emotionally, there's a sweet spot between anxiety, too much stimulation, and boredom, not enough stimulation. It's what's known as the flow channel. If you speak physiology, it's the Dobson curve. Years ago, Chick sent me how I sat down with a Google mathematician and tried to figure out what's the difference between challenge and skills in average folks, and they came up with 4% as the difference. And but it was a back of the envelope calculation. It wasn't real science. It was just a thing they did. Chip Conley actually told me about it. Mike didn't. Chip Conley told me about it. But we took it into the Flow Research Collective and ran a couple years of studies on it, and we found out it was pretty close to accurate. It's really hard to test, really hard to figure it out, but we thought it was really close to accurate. But, and this is the first thing that we did, in older adults, and older here means anybody over 30, actually, for reasons that we can get to, but once you sort of cross that threshold, all your trauma stays with you, right? And we call it allostatic load. It's trauma, the impact of trauma over time on our physiology and our psychology is known as allostatic load. Allostatic overload is one of the #1 causes of burnout. But what we started to figure out is that because of allostatic load, especially when you're going after difficult physical challenges, sweet spot is no longer 4 to 5%, it's down to 1%. So it's way shrunk down, and you don't even notice it because a lot of it's subconscious, but there are subconscious brakes and governors on performance that tend to be there. So the idea was, we're going to start with an established motor pattern, something that you can do 100% of the time with perfect success, no fear, and build on it one micro emotion at a time because of this. So we were trying to go like 1 inch at a time was the motto. And for myself, for Ryan, for most of the people we trained, we actually had to hold people back, slowed them way, way, way down in how they'd normally want to progress. Even when everything was going well, even when everything was working, we slowed everybody down immensely, and it worked. You got to go slow to go fast in a lot of peak performance, and this was definitely the case here. So that was one of the main things we did.
So, and what we're going to do too, we're just going to go for a few more minutes, then we'll take a break, we'll do lunch, and then we'll come back with Stephen a little bit later. What are the biggest obstacles as people age that get in their way because the slow rot, right?
I think they do the wrong thing. I mean, really the biggest obstacles is people do the wrong things. They reach for the wrong lever. So if you want a peak performance aging in a sentence, everything you need to know about peak performance aging, if you want to rock till you drop, you have to engage on a regular basis in challenging social and creative activities that demand, and all these words mean something, so we can talk about what they mean, dynamic, deliberate play, and take place in novel outdoor environments. That's the biggest lever we have at our disposal. I'll say it again, we want to engage in novel, creative, and social activities, novel, challenging, creative, and social activities that demand dynamic, deliberate play and take place in novel outdoor environments.
What about shaming your younger friends, like Joel, when he goes, we'll repeat it and then I'll say,
challenging, creative, and social activities that demand dynamic, deliberate play and take place in novel outdoor environments. And we can define what those terms mean in a second and why they're important, but I'll let you ask his question.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, so I've been on Joel's houseboat with him. He skis probably every weekend. He has a house.
But look at Genius Network. This is a challenging social and creative activity, right?
Yeah.
Dynamic just means all 5 categories of functional fitness. So I said we have to train all our skills. What are those skills? Strength, stamina, agility, balance, and flexibility. Those are the 5 skills we have to train. And there are very precise numbers for this. The WHO, the World Health Organization, we need 150 to 300 minutes of moderate to big, this is for peak performance aging, not for healthy aging or successful aging, for peak performance aging, meaning you really want to perform at your best. It's 150 to 300 minutes of stamina training a week, so aerobic training a week, 2 strength days a week, 3 balance, flexibility, and agility days a week. So if he's skiing, if he's coming to Genius Network, like he's hitting all the boxes, I would guess.
Oh yeah, and I went water skiing with him, and the frickin' guy is amazing. And he's been, you started water skiing after, like at 50, right?
At 50.
Yeah. And he does it.
My friend Rebecca
weekly.
Rush, who has most of the endurance mountain bike, they call her the Queen of Pain.
Yeah.
She didn't start mountain biking professionally till her 30s, and she didn't really start winning her awards till her 40s.
Wow.
And she just won the human-powered Iditarod at 54.
Wow. Awesome. Awesome. So there you go. And I mean, look, to me, this is very inspiring. I turn 55 years old tomorrow. So, you know, we're both the same age. I think you're, thank you.
I'm a little older.
Yeah.
By like 8 months.
Yeah. So.
Which would explain our overlapping taste in music.
Exactly, yeah, because we're both into punk rock and stuff. I sent him a picture, I texted him a couple days ago, me with Henry Rollins from Black Flag when I was in my 20s when I took that picture. So. You touch on some of these. If you took all of the things you know and gave someone one technique to immediately better their health, what would that one technique be?
Depends on the person, but so for a peak performance aging perspective, you start with mindset, and the next 2 things to focus on, social activities, are really crucial. So like it is, from a peak performance aging perspective, you could be morbidly obese and you're going to go farther by having regular social contact than by losing weight. Social contact is rough equivalent of quitting smoking, right? In terms of longevity and health. So social contact really matters. Change your mindset, and then this is a weird one. The single greatest correlate for preserving physical health and mental health is leg strength. Yeah, you know it. It's leg strength, and which is odd. But they've done all these studies on cognitive cognitive reserve and preserving brain function and leg strength. They think it's because if you lose your legs, you lose your ability to like move around and talk to people, basically, and social stuff stimulates our brain so much that we fall off a cliff without it. So that's one of the reasons, but they think there's other stuff that they just haven't found yet.
Yeah. How many of you, and Akshay knows Wes Kress? Frickin' guy, every day, this dude is like, he's a doctor of Chinese medicine. He sits in the sauna at Optimize, like, let me not fall off the bench here, and he literally sits like this for 30 minutes every day in a sauna, and I'm just, like, you try doing it for like 3 minutes, your knees are like, what the hell? And just sits there, and the frickin' dude's legs, and the guy's in one of the most incredibly physically fit people because he focuses on the leg strength, which is awesome. I just wanted to show my socks too, my what's in it for them sort of. Yeah, like that, how I product placement again.
With the
socks,
it's good.
I should get you a pair.
I've got Wu-Tang Clan socks on, but you know.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So let me get one more question. What's a step-by-step method or way to get more easily into flow that everyone here can utilize going forward? And when we come back, we'll do Q&A and stuff with everyone. But
so I don't know if there's a step-by-step. There's no one size fits all. There are 26 known flow triggers, and they're stuff we all know. Novelty is a flow trigger, risk is a flow trigger, and that doesn't just mean physical risk, emotional risk, social risk, intellectual risk, pattern recognition. So let me tell you why my backup plan was interesting. When we link ideas together in a novel way, that's pattern recognition. It's fundamental to survival. It's what most neurons do at a basic level, and it produces dopamine. We get a little bit of dopamine, and we all know this. If you've ever done a Sudoku, crossword puzzle, get an answer right, that little rush of pleasure you feel, that's dopamine, and it's coming to you from pattern recognition. So creativity is a flow trigger. So when I say challenging creative activities, by the way, both of those are flow triggers. But the interesting thing about park skiing and why the plan was interesting to me is you can you want to stack sort of creative experience on top of creative experience on top of creative experience. When you look at a terrain feature like, oh, that's a mound of snow, I can throw a 180 off of it, or I could grind across it, or whatever it is that I was going to do, that's pattern recognition. So you can stack creative decision on top of creative decision. We were talking about this last night at dinner, right? You can stack creative decision on top of creative decision on top of creative decision as you're skiing or snowboarding down a mountain. By the way, I got hired a bunch of years ago. I can't talk about the program or the coach, but for a major college football program. And the idea was, if we can get our players into flow before practice, would injuries go down? And the answer is yes, that actually worked. What did we do? It was a football team, and they all, at the start of practice, they always ran 2 laps around the football field. That was what everybody did to warm up, and we just put them in nature. We said, take it off the football field, go run the trails and interpret the terrain. So if you've got a hill, go up an angle and come down with your body just like you were surfing or skiing or whatever, but you're just running. And for the linemen who can't run that far, it was roll and do sort of the things you're going to be doing on the field through the forest in novel outdoor environments. And it worked. Tremendous amount of flow during practice, a lot less injury on the field. So it's not just skiing, snowboarding, that sort of thing that works here. But the other thing I want to say, one of the reasons novel outdoor environments are really crucial to this. So most of us work out. Most of us probably don't work out outside, and really if we do work out outside, we're not seeking out novel outdoor environments. Here's why it matters so much. One, especially from peak performance aging standpoint, we said earlier there are 9 known causes of aging. If you've read Futures Faster Than You Think, any of my work with Peter Diamandis, we talk a lot about it. All of them link back to inflammation. When we are in nature, most people know that 20 minutes in nature flushes stress hormones out of your system and will actually outperform most SSRIs for mild to moderate depression. It sort of equals out once you get to extreme depression. And there are reasons for this. If anybody's curious, come see me offline and I'll tell you why it works. But one, outdoor environments are calming us down. Novelty is a flow trigger. When we encounter novelty, it produces dopamine, and dopamine drives focus into the present moment. But the big deal from a peak performance aging standpoint, if you want to hang on to your mental function, 3 things are important. One is novel experiences in outdoor environments. Why? If you want to hang on to your cognitive function, you want neurogenesis. You want the birth of new neurons, and you want new neural networks. Most of the neurogenesis in the adult brain takes place in a spot known as the hippocampus, which is a fancy Latin word for seahorse because it looks like a seahorse. It's a deep brain structure. It does long-term memory. It also does location. So from a hunter-gatherer perspective, right, remembering where you were when like an emotionally charged thing like I got attacked by a bear or there was ripe fruit on this fruit tree happens is really crucial to survival. So the brain is specifically designed to remember where you are when you have emotionally charged experiences. That's what we birth 700 new neurons every day in the hippocampus until basically we die, but that's what they're for. And so I always say peak performance is nothing more than getting our biology to work for us rather than against us. Peak performance aging is getting our biology to work for us rather than against us when faced with the challenges and opportunities of aging. This is what I'm talking about when I say something like that. Novel outdoor environments use the brain the way the brain is designed to be used, and as a result we get to hang on to brain function for a lot longer. So that's the sort of the novel challenge portion of that.
One thing and you mentioned, you know, as you used to run in the beginning, I have to bring this up, and I didn't have it as a question, but what I found when we were talking, when we went out to lunch in Tucson, is that you were a fan of Dr. John Sarno's work.
Yes.
When it comes to physical pain.
Absolutely.
And I'm a huge believer. I think the vast majority of the way that pain is treated and diagnosed is wrong. And I lived in chronic pain for most of my adult life, which the way Sarno would describe what he called TMS, in the beginning he called it tension myositis syndrome, then it became tension myoneuro, then the mind-body syndrome, and you're an expert in this area. And he said that the pain is caused by oxygen deprivation and brought on by repressed emotions, predominantly anger and rage. Right. And so Steve Ozanich, who wrote recent books on it, he's sent you some of his books. Could you explain that from your standpoint about how much the mind and emotional states affect the physical body?
Well, to me, this is one of the great limitations of conventional medicine, is that it is totally stuck in the biomedical model, which sees only that which is physical as being real. And in that model, if you observe a change in a physical system, the cause has to be physical. The idea of non-physical causation of physical events is not allowed. And for that reason, all of the whole realm of mind-body medicine is viewed with great suspicion by conventional science and medicine, and that enormously limits their ability to manage these conditions. With back pain particularly, one of the most striking facts about it is that you can look at x-rays and scans of people that look so horrible, you can't imagine that they are not crippled by pain and they have no symptoms whatever. Yeah. On the other hand, you can look at scans and x-rays of people that look completely normal and the people are disabled by pain. So there's a very low correlation between physical findings and subjective experience, and that's one of the things that Sarno is based on. So this is a major component of integrated medicine. I call it whole person medicine, where you don't exclude the mind. You know, that's like, it's key. Let me tell you one story. I was a couple weeks ago, I was in Japan, and I spent time in Okinawa, which is one of my favorite places. When I was doing research for my book Healthy Aging, I made a number of trips there because Okinawa has had the highest concentration of centenarians in the world, and it's very interesting to look at their, what is it about that? It's awful hard to tease all those things apart. It's a tropical Pacific paradise with clean air and water. The Okinawan diet is one of the most interesting diets I've ever seen. An enormous, not very different from mainland Japanese diet, but incredible variety of sea and land vegetables. Unusual foods. Okinawans get great physical activity all the time, not by going to gyms and using exercise machines. They're calling in fish nets and carrying water and chopping wood and hoeing in the garden and stuff like that. But I think especially there is an enormous influence of the way that aging is thought of in that culture. The old people in Okinawa are honored. They're living treasures. They're made part of all community activities. One story I collected there, which I think is very telling, is that a common cause of sibling fighting in traditional Okinawan society is over who is going to get to take care of the aging parents. Very different from here. Anyway, I was in there. There's a village in Okinawa called Ogimi, which is celebrated as the longevity village. I had been there a number of times, but I went back this time, and they paraded out a number of their old centenarians to, you know, which they do.
Wow.
And all of them were asked what was the secret of their longevity. And one of the things that they all said was eat everything. Interesting. However, in the past couple of years, Okinawan longevity has plummeted, and now Hong Kong has surpassed them, which is hard for me to believe. And the fall in Okinawan longevity is entirely attributed to McDonald's. That there has been a sudden appearance of American fast food, and people go for it. So when these people say eat everything, I don't think they meant McDonald's. I think it was their traditional diets. But how dramatic to see this change in such a short time.
No doubt. Wow. That's fascinating.
One woman who was 102, I think, another secret that she had, which I've started to practice, she says, you want to move your fingers all the time. And she was always doing things like this. She said, it's very good for the brain.
Yeah, yeah. The adrenal reset diet, what does that even mean? What does adrenal mean? What is that? Because I don't think the average person understands that.
Yeah. Our body has little glands that control whether we're burning or storing, you know, quite simply. And a lot of our strategies to make us lose weight are strategies that make us more apt to store weight.
Right.
So I talk about how you can go out from storing and towards burning. And so it's a big global catastrophe that we're facing.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a whole list of questions here that I'd like. I mean, we could talk for a week, but so the rates of obesity are growing like dramatically.
Yeah.
What are some of the latest projections of kind of where we're at?
You know, it's pretty terrifying stuff. One stat that I read recently showed that in the next little over a decade, we're looking at 2/3, 67% of people on the globe being overweight, obese, or morbidly obese. So globally, the numbers of deaths we're projecting, so go back to like 1800, all the wars all around the world since 1800. So World War I, World War II, you know, Vietnam, Korea, and not just our wars, but all the others. So all those casualties together, we're talking about more than that in the coming decade from complications of obesity.
Wow.
And we're talking about roughly 10 times the cost of all those wars since 1800.
Why?
That's it. So the old model is people are lazy and they eat too much. That's what we're being taught and told. And it's so disconnected from reality. You know, to see the rates go up stratospherically in the course of a decade. So one thing we see is that animals, so chimps, when their food is controlled, they're getting obese, even on controlled diets. So it's not behavior and lifestyle. There's a collective number of factors that push us into this storage state. And our body is getting geared up for famine. You know, we have these mechanisms that allowed us to survive famine in the past, and now a whole lot of things push those buttons and we're storing all of our food as fat.
Yeah, and and you get right into it immediately in the beginning of your book, where you talk about stress, you talk about toxins, you talk about all of these other factors that I never really quite considered had that much of an impact on people's weight. You know, I have a friend, I won't name his name, where and I've known him for probably 15 years, and without changing his diet, when this guy would go through a breakup of a relationship or go through stressful situations, he would literally just gain weight. And whenever things would, and he's like kind of a roller coaster sort of lifestyle, you know, I mean, he would have lots of ups and downs, and it was amazing. And I'm not talking just like 5 or 10 pounds. I mean, he would literally fluctuate 30, 40 pounds. And then things, you know, he would start meditating and he would like lose 20 pounds, and he would swear that he could not figure it out. But then he identified a few years ago that it was totally based on stress level. And so now one of his maintenance things is keeping himself not freaking getting completely stressed out, or, you know, because if you're not sleeping, all these sort of things. So,
you know, way back when, stress meant danger, and danger meant predators. And predators would go after us when they had fewer food options. So that meant food scarcity. So stress equals famine to our bodies. And famine means we prepare, we hold on to it. So his body was not under physical danger, but the mental, emotional stress, which can be part of that for sure, that triggered the same thing that danger would. And his body went into a storage mode because of it.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure where I first read this, but it's like, people would make the analogy, well, you know, we're so much safer and we got all these luxuries that we never had before. The difference, though, is it's just nonstop. you know, the interconnectivity. Whereas if you're chased by a lion, you know, hundreds of years ago, you know, when you're done, you know,
if you survive, you're bored for a while, you're safe.
Right, exactly. Whereas in modern society, if you have like anxiety going on, it could just be constant from the moment you wake up to your inability to sleep and all these sort of things. So let me, without going too deep into that, how much do genes control our body weight? And what is a gene? I mean, I'm going to ask you some very basic sort of things because I want people to, you know, you hear about all these things, but like, what does it actually mean?
You know, many who have struggled have been told that it's genetic, that their weight is genetic. Genes to our body are what a blueprint is to a building. So a gene is a set of instructions that tells us how we're going to grow. So you see a set of identical twins. You know, they share the same genes, they've got the same eye color and a lot of the same health habits. They've been studied. So if twins are raised separately, their body weight has no relationship whatsoever. There's like no correlation. And they've shown that the difference in weight from one twin to another is predictable based upon the adrenal hormones. So the more one twin has adrenal hormone stress, the more that twin will gain weight. So we're often told that weight gain is genetic, and it is true that there is susceptibility among certain family members we see, but now we know it's not because of the genes. And the positive side of that is that means it's not inevitable, that it can change and it can improve.
Okay, so if I see some people, like let's say I have a lot of female friends, and some like just don't eat and I know skinny fat. I mean, so there's some people that are not healthy, but they look good, and there's others that just exercise and work out, and they still have trouble losing weight. And so the best of my layman's understanding is, it's genetics. You know, this person just has sort of this thing, and this person does not. To what degree are some people just born a certain way where they can eat whatever they want and they maintain a certain level of thinness, and other people do not? What is that all about?
Well, they're a vanishing species. Current stats tell us that. You brought up skinny fat, which is a good concept. There are those to where their scale weight may be good, but they do not have enough muscle tissue. So they're okay weight, but just not lean enough, not enough lean mass. So if you take them out and you take out those who are overweight or obese, the remaining percent of the population is about 11%. So about 11% of the people right now have good body composition. So there's not many, and they are dwindling very rapidly.
Wow. Okay, so now one of the things you talk about is why do you argue that calories do not explain weight gain? Because there's been this for years, you know, calories in, calories out.
Yeah.
Explain what is a calorie, and then how does that relate to weight gain or weight loss or whatever?
You know, it makes me nuts, and that is one of the biggest public policy statements, is that it's just, you know, eat this, not that, move more, you know, change the calorie equation. So a calorie is a unit of fuel. So you've got like a gallon of gas as a unit of fuel. So a calorie is how much metabolic energy food would release if you burned it in a test tube. Now, they've argued at the level of public health that weight gain is from people consuming more calories. And then the solution based on that is eat fewer calories. And I think about that, well, let's go to football. So I'm not a big sports expert, I'll put that out there.
And same with
okay, good, so I don't have to be embarrassed. So let's say that we're doing a post-game analysis, and you know the Cowboys just crushed it, they won the Super Bowl, and someone wants to know from the big commentator, well, why did the Cowboys win? Oh, here we go, the Cowboys won the game because they scored 30 more points than their opponents. Well, duh, you know, so there's a description, but that's not an explanation.
Right.
And that wouldn't be a strategy. You couldn't say, hey guys, next year let's score more points.
Right.
We could win that way.
Right.
So at best, that's all the calorie model is. It's just describing events. But
doesn't explain it.
Doesn't explain it at all. And not only that, but it doesn't work.
So can you explain it?
Sure. It's the storage response. The body goes into a storage mode. And you mentioned about the very real, powerful mental, emotional stress, and that's big. But a lot of the other factors that are invisible do the same thing. So we could breathe in plastic residues, and the same thing, like your friend when he would go through a breakup or a crisis, and how his health would change from that. The same stuff can happen to you from breathing in byproducts from plastic. The same things that would happen under a crisis. Or you can spend more time around electromagnetic fields. You know, we're carrying our devices all the time.
Right.
That's just like the breakup and the crisis. Or we can have the fact that A third more people than ever before do shift work. They're not sleeping at regular times. That's just like the stress. That's just like the crisis.
Did you say a third more actually do that?
Starting in 1980, it went up by about a third.
Really? In the U.S. or is this worldwide?
Globally.
Wow.
The global economy, we're working on each other's schedules.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, sleep. Yeah, well, let's talk about something like sleep. I mean, I'll throw that in here. I guess
Sure.
I can zig and zag here a little bit. But like, how much does sleep affect things?
That's a factor. And somewhere around 1980, 1990, things shifted that caused radical weight gain. And we've seen that sleep can be a stronger predictor of weight than diet or exercise can. So the old model of it being behavior, habit, calories, sleep doesn't make sense on that. If you sleep more, you're actually burning fewer calories. But the data is strong that good, deep sleep rhythms are helpful. And they help because they reset the adrenal response and move us out of that storage state.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So, one of the questions I have here is that experts say that weight gain is a result of poor habits. How does habits relate to this? Because I'm of the mindset that much of any sort of indulgence is addiction, and the brain gets hijacked, and I know a lot about behavioral addictions, sex addiction, gambling addiction, food addiction. And when I say a lot, I mean I've done quite a few interviews with people on behavioral addictions versus chemical and drug addictions, and I used to be a drug addict. I won't go into my whole story here, but I've talked about that when I was 18 years old. I used freebase cocaine. I was a drug addict, and I'm a big admirer of 12-step groups and recovery and all that. That being said, there's a difference between habits and just flat out addiction. Habits, I think everyone has, good habits, even if the consequences of their habits are very poor. If someone wakes up every day and eats, an Egg McMuffin and doesn't exercise and smokes a cigarette, they've developed really good habits of waking up and, eating poorly and doing that. But that's used to shame people and guilt people, and what's your take on it?
Well, yeah, it shames, it guilts, it raises the stress load, and it's not a rational solution. So habits imply willpower, and they imply intent. They imply that we've got a choice to eat this or that, or move or not move. There's some conscious intent behind that. This model, this idea, totally breaks down when we look at the fact that infants and toddlers are getting obese and morbidly obese at unprecedented rates.
Yeah, and you even talk about animals.
And animals.
Yeah.
So from 1990 to 2000, about 20,000 separate animals were tracked, representing dozens of different species and many different habitats. Every single animal tracked was found to have unprecedented weight gain over that time frame. Now, some people say, oh, well, people feed their pets too much. Well, okay, we'll dismiss that. And some could say, well, wild animals eat scraps from humans. We could dismiss that too. But many examples were animals on controlled diets. So their food was measured, their food was unchanged, their activity was monitored, their activity was controlled. Chimps, between that time frame, our second closest genetic relative, they gained roughly 30% body weight per decade, 2 decades back to back on controlled environments. So once you see that, the whole idea about willpower, habit, indulgence, no, it just doesn't fit anymore.
Right. So what is causing that?
There's a collective higher number of factors that push our bodies to the storage state and make us hold on to things. There's actually a clock. So this is crazy, but belly fat, the stuff around our organs, is very different than the subcutaneous fat below our skin. And every part of your body has a clock. There's rhythms, there's timing to it. Like you're asleep versus awake, it's obviously very different. So you can pull out someone's belly fat and you can keep it alive in a dish, provided you've got the right ingredients. It'll survive for a little while.
That's exciting.
And you can watch its clock. You can measure the activity of its biological rhythm. The more visceral fat someone's carrying, the greater degree that their clock is out of rhythm with their body's central clock, which the adrenal glands control. So when this regulation is off, the body is storing and holding on to things. And it's not a matter of starving it, it's a matter of resetting it and recalibrating its timing.
Well, so since we live in such a culture, and I have a friend, Dave Kekich, he's in a wheelchair. He's very involved in health, and he's in incredible shape. He's in his 70s, and in spite of being paralyzed from the chest down, he works out, he eats very well. He's studied health and nutrition his whole life, and he's told me about when he would go and do talks. he would talk about, you know, the benefits for your circulatory system by doing cardio exercise and vitality, and, you know, just things of how exercise and nutrition create longevity and allow you to feel better. He's like, and the audience would be interested, but then he would talk about how to, you know, tighten saggy skin, or how anything related to vanity, they would light up, you know. And so it's one of these things to where I've always, as a marketer, know that sell people what they want, give them what they need, you know, because people
beautiful.
want to look better. And so guys typically from just a physical standpoint will say, I'm generalizing here, will gain weight around their bellies, and they would have love handles, whereas women would, you know, their butts or their thighs. And if they start exercising, their boobs disappear and their butts are the last thing to go. And guys like to say, what is going on in the physical? How does the body, when it comes to weight loss, respond to it that way? Like, for instance, why does a guy have like love handles? Why does some women have, you know, it's thighs and butt? Because we could talk all day long about all these wonderful benefits, but it's like, if we can make, you know, my butt awesome, or if we could make, you know, ripped abs, everything, life would be perfect, right? But I'd love to just get your explanation from understanding what does the body do? How does it process this and the different types of fats?
You know, I love the marketing analogy, and so with an economic analogy, so we could have a real estate investment, we could have, you know, stocks and bonds, we could have gold coins hidden in the backyard, you know.
Right.
So the body works that way too. And whenever we have adequate resources to survive, we want to put the surplus somewhere. And if times are secure, if we're stable and steady, we might buy a rental property. We might make a long-term real estate investment.
Right.
So that's muscle mass. That's, for guys, the chest and the biceps. For women, that's healthy toned legs.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if someone says, hey, your business might go under, you're going to lose your job next week, and you've got some cash, that's not time for the rental property. That's maybe cash under the mattress. That's like gold coins buried in the backyard. So that's like security. It's like quick access. It's liquid cash. So that's belly fat.
Gotcha.
That's stuff around the butt and the thighs and around the waist. That's the cash under the mattress.
So your body's is simply trying to survive.
Just trying to get by.
So all of the so take a vanity out of the picture. The way your body's responding to stuff is it's simply trying to survive. So this is really a conversation about how to perform, how to thrive, not just survive, and reset it. So when you say reset, it sounds like with all of the toxins and all of the weird things that are going on out there, how much of this can we truly control versus, if you could even explain that, I don't know, in percentages or whatever.
Sure.
How much of this is controllable versus how much of this is like, we have to pick the right place to live, we have to be lucky we're not under electrical lines, we don't carry our computers and electronic devices, you know, I mean, how would you respond to that sort of question,
short of living in the wilderness in a cave or
bubble,
something.
yeah.
You're right. So the cool thing is that all these things affect a rhythm, and they throw it off, but by and large, our bodies are gravitated towards thriving. You know, we're really meant to not stay in that mode for long. It's meant to be like you're talking about the tiger thing, to where you survive and then you're back on track again. So we want to thrive. You know, we want to go back to homeostasis. And in terms of time frames, the measurable disruption of our bodies in the storage process, it can fix in a month or two. And when it's fixed, when it's back on track, it's easier to keep it there than it was to get it there, because it's really the natural state. So it's very recoverable in the short term.
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about athletes, because everybody in this room is an athlete in a certain way, shape, or form within their business. You're a superstar, you're a rock star, you're the guy or the gal that's doing it and doing it in an interesting way and getting it done, okay? Now, I'm getting calls from major sports teams because that is the new advantage. You know, everybody heard about Moneyball, right? Way back when, where they were looking at different ways to increase productivity through their ball players. Now it's becoming sleep. The Jets actually, believe it or not, hired sleep specialists to work with their team. There are actually a lot of areas. I'm only going to go over 3 different areas today where we see a change based on athletes and their sleep. No sleep equals no learning. Okay? It's actually sleep after an event, a lesson, or a game is the most important sleep that an athlete can get. Here's why. Because remember REM sleep? It solidifies that neuroscience. It actually makes those neurons work together in order for you to remember and learn from your training session. The same will hold true in every single one of your businesses. If you are having a training session, whether you're training people who are buying your products or you're training your staff, if they don't have a good night's rest afterwards, if you go way on into the night till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning and they're not getting the sleep they need, they're not going to be able to make those memories to learn from those mistakes, to be able to understand what the next thing is that they're supposed to do. It's pretty impressive. Solidifying knowledge requires both REM and deep sleep. It's not just about REM anymore, it's also about deep sleep. The first aspect, which happens during deep sleep, is basically a rehearsal. So during deep sleep, your mind is kind of going over what you've learned and stripping out some of the bad stuff, and then REM sleep is moving information from your short term to your long term. And that's where it gets really effective. And that's where you can then organize your information and recall it in a way, shape, and form that can be advantageous to you. Slower reaction time, that's kind of obvious, right? If I'm tired, I don't really react as well. Pretty interesting, when you take a look at people who've done an all-nighter, their reaction time triples. Not in a good way, in a bad way, okay? And so one of the things we're seeing with a lot of athletes is that, in fact, the sleepier they are. So for example, if you're on a Major League Baseball team, okay, and you have, 162 games a year or something like that, these guys and gals, are on the road constantly, right? How are they sleeping? Where are they sleeping? How much sleep are they getting, right? Another big factor, when you're in a series, right now we're in the middle of the World Series, right? So what's happening? Back to back to back to back games. Well, if somebody is playing in an area that isn't in their time zone, now you compile jet lag on top of lack of sleep, and now you're trying to tell these people that they've got to perform at the top of their level at the most important game of the season. How is that going to work out for them? It's probably not going to work out as well as they would have imagined. Low testosterone comes from lack of sleep, right? So what does that mean? Just 1 week after sleeping 5 hours, a man's testosterone level drops as if he's aged 11 years. 11 years, okay? So if I'm going to get 5 hours of sleep a night, I'm 46 years old, I'm going to have the level of testosterone of a 57-year-old. Nothing against 57-year-olds in here, but I'd like my testosterone to stay at age 46 as long as I can keep it there. Okay? But testosterone has a massive factor when it comes to athletic performance, but it also has a very big factor in terms of aggression, in terms of connection, in terms of cognition. So when we're starting to think about where's our energy coming from, I know somebody was talking about energy before, testosterone has a lot to do with it. And it's not, testosterone, by the way, is not just a male thing, it's also a female thing. Women have certain levels of testosterone as well. Believe it or not, estrogen is actually a bigger energy factor than testosterone. We can talk about that too. How does it affect performance? In many, many different ways. Sleep deprivation and poor quality sleep affect muscle memory. It affects increase in metabolic process, actually causing an increase in energy expenditure. The amount of calories that you take in when you're sleep deprived, actually you burn through them in certain ways faster. Why is that bad for an athlete? They run out of fuel, okay? In the middle of a game, in the middle of whatever, because they're sleep deprived, their whole metabolic system isn't working well. That's for the elite athlete. Well, we have a marathoner in the room, but I know we may have some other people in here who are interested in, I know Robin was saying he wants to become a better athlete. There's a lot of people in here who are athletes or are interested in this type of thing, who are interested in elite sports. Now let's talk about people who aren't. Let's talk about the metabolic process and what occurs during sleep deprivation. It's pretty amazing. So one of the things that happens is your cortisol level jacks up. That means your appetite increases. Your metabolic process slows because it's trying to conserve the amount of resources that you have in your system. High appetite, low metabolism. Two other things happen that are very, very interesting. Your hormone levels change. Ghrelin, which is your go hormone that tells you to go eat, actually increases. Leptin, which is your satiety hormone or the stop hormone, decreases. So when you're sleep deprived, you have a high appetite, you have high hunger, those are two very different things, you have low satiety, and you have low metabolism. It's a recipe for disaster. Food choice also changes, which is pretty amazing. People, when you're tired, what are the types of foods that you go for? Let's go. What are the types of foods that you guys eat or gals eat?
Carbs. Doritos.
Doritos, carbs, sugar, What other stuff? Like anybody? I'm a Lucky Charms guy. Cereal and milk is a big one for me when I'm like really down. How about anybody else? Ice cream's a big one, and a late night snack ice cream too is another one. We can talk about that too, right? Here's what we know about those food choices. They're actually neurochemically driven. When you eat high carbohydrate, high fat foods, it produces serotonin, which is the antithesis of cortisol. Remember, your cortisol levels are high when you're sleep deprived. Your brain doesn't like it. It wants to calm down. So it actually makes you crave high fat, high carbohydrate foods to lower that cortisol level so that you can actually get some rest. It's not your fault that you want to have ice cream and cereal and all those good things in the middle of the night. Your brain is telling you that you're so sleep deprived, it's got to slow down, and that's how your brain does it. It craves those foods. Again, during REM sleep, the body reaches peak testosterone levels. Less REM equals less testosterone. REM sleep promotes protein synthesis, building muscle mass, again, for the athletes in the room. And sleep deprivation, low sleep quality, and jet lag are some of the key factors to what happens to these people. Great story. A good friend of mine who's also a sleep specialist works with the Boston Bruins. Anybody in here a hockey fan? Okay, so we got some guy, got a big hockey fan back there. All right, so really interesting situation. The night before, and this was in 2011, the night before Game 7, or I'm sorry, the day before Game 7 of the 2011 Stanley Cup, he got a call from the head trainer at the Bruins. And what was happening was the day of the game, the day 7, they had a scheduled practice for 10:30. And what the sleep specialist said was, cancel the practice. And he's like, are you kidding me? Cancel the practice? Like, it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. Like, this is it. We've got to get there. And he's like, That's actually because they were playing in, I think it was Vancouver. So it was really interesting. That would have been a perfect napping time. They canceled the practice. They let all the players sleep. Guess what happened? They won. Was it due to the sleep specialist and that advice? I can't put my finger on that, but here's what I can tell you. The next year, the Vancouver Canucks hired a sleep specialist.
It might have something to do with the fact that the city was burned down.
Well, I'm not saying that there weren't external factors in there, but using this as an example, one of the things we know, especially with like elite athletes, I've worked with some Olympians before, and here's what we know. We're talking about a 30% difference in performance at the elite level. You know what a 30% performance difference is at that level? That's being on the podium or to get nowhere near the podium. Okay? It's, when you talk, that is absolutely the difference between a gold and not showing up. Okay? So when we're talking about sleep, it has massive, massive effects on athletic performance.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. They're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.